All right, so um, as you probably by some recent tweets, today's Kingdoms stream is a little bit different. I'm gonna hide that just for a minute. We'll talk about it in just a second. So, I've implemented a new event that'll be happening every Friday for 24 hours on the SMP, starting today. This is my first time on the SMP today while this event has been happening. And the event is called The Reckoning. So the whole point of this event is just to allow members to have a little bit more leeway as far as thievery and destruction and things like that on the server. And this also is meant to make people on the server a little bit more wary of one another, as well as make people more dependent on their alliances, because we already have quite a few alliances set up on the server. I'll have to check in and see who's allied with who, because I only know a couple of the alliances that have been set up. Oh god. Hello!
August.
Hi.
I need to lawyer up August.
Hold on, I'm doing an explanation of the reckoning at the moment.
Oh, okay, we can help,
Okay. But
Where are you?
but oh my gosh, look at you guys. Those are so cute. Those are
Our little crowns.
adorable.
Yeah, I started using better vanilla.
As you
I'm
should.
better.
As you should. I love them. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm all decked out to meet you guys. I didn't mean to be. My bad.
Alright, look at Betsy, you were looking good.
Oh, thank you.
Not in front of me.
You're right. Not in front of our son.
Yeah, not in front of
Your brother-in-law.
Yeah, not in front of the brother. But yeah, the reckoning is just meant to make people lean on their alliances and things like that. And pretty much everyone that I'm strictly allied with is here at the moment. But I have like Ray and Finn that are indebted to me, which is like a little bit of an odd situation, but it'll come in handy when wars come into play. So I wanted to, before we get into stuff, I wanted to get into like the specific rules for the reckoning, just so everyone is on the same page as we are. It feels so weird to look over and not see my webcam, by the way. Every time I look over, I'm a little bit like...
I'm not doing webcam either.
Yeah.
Closed.
I keep thinking like something's wrong, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, it's supposed to be like that. We're okay.
Yeah. I know, it's so weird for me to not use my webcam.
But the rules of the reckoning are that it'll occur every Friday from 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This bit's a little bit more just for us, but the beginning and end will be marked with corresponding messages in the Discord. We didn't get that today because I privately set those up, and for some reason they didn't go off today. So I had to reset them up with like a whole different bot, which was super annoying. And it wouldn't let me like hide the messages, so Funny just saw the like slew. Yeah, Funny was the only one that called him out though. But there was just like a slew of messages going off in the Discord. And then I had to go back and delete them all because I didn't want them all to be there. The second like regulation, I guess I would call it, is that alliances should be upheld during the reckoning, so you really shouldn't be like fucking around with people in your alliance.
I'll fuck around with people in my alliance.
I hope so. And if you're if you are like messing with people in your alliance and fucking up the alliance, then it's up to you and your alliance members to decide, you know, what the fallout is going to be because of that. And like I mentioned, like the Reckoning is meant to also help decide future alliances and potential wars. So if someone today stole something that was really valuable or important to one of us, we could use that as a reason to potentially start a war in the future or think about starting a war. Which is kind of what makes me laugh a little bit that Honey really wants to give people's belongings back.
Too late.
Yeah. Theft is allowed during the Reckoning. Because of this, I've told everyone that I highly recommend having like secret storage areas. I'm calling them vaults. But the secret storage areas are not safe areas. So if someone finds them, they are also free to be stolen from. I already have like a backup secret area, one that Levi doesn't know about. I have to show you it eventually. Yeah, it's not specifically hidden from you. It's just not completely finished, so I haven't shown it to you yet. Actually, I hid it from you because I don't trust you. Divorce.
Here's your shoes back. Made him invisible. I wanted to be naked.
Whoa. All items dropped upon your death during the Reckoning are free for the taking. So if someone kills you today and you don't get there in time, they can go ahead and just take all the shit that you had on you. So it's highly recommended not to have anything super valuable on you today unless it's like something that you need to have on you to protect yourself. And obviously you can try to like take it back by like bargaining for it or just asking nicely, and if they're nice enough they can give it back.
Me in the back off the hardcore PvP.
Can you please not go to war with me, so?
And then build destruction is off limits just because we talked about this and 8 messaged me about this, and like I was going back and forth about this before 8 messaged me. We just have so many builds that took people forever to build, and people are still working on their builds, and I would hate for someone's hard work to just go away in like a moment unless they've like fully consented for that to be a thing. So for now, build destruction's off limits. I mentioned everybody. If the majority come to the consensus that that's something that we want, okay.
I'm gonna kill you. I'm starting war with you right now.
I can't believe I saw that in the chat. You're ridiculous.
It's been in my head all day.
It's the tism.
It is. But yeah, if the majority decide that they want build destruction to be a thing, then we'll bring it in. And then lastly, people can have traps. Obviously not like destruction type of traps, but something to legitimately trap someone or kill them, or at least like deter them. It can be destruction if it's like your own area, or if it's like gonna kill them and slightly destroy the area, but if it could potentially like destroy someone else's build or something like along those lines, then obviously it goes against the other rule. Nice, bestie.
Thank you.
Of course. But yeah, those are the rules. Today's already been pretty hectic, it seems like, based on the chat.
Oh, it has.
What have you guys been up to on here? I'm sorry
okay.
It took me so long to get here.
Oh, I need to
That's
lawyer
okay.
up, August.
Lawyer up.
Why?
The social network. Bitch.
I'm going to court.
I'm going to come.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's totally irrelevant. Go ahead.
Okay,
Start from the beginning, and I will chime in where I need to.
Okay. I logged on.
So I'm gonna chime in. No, I'm just kidding.
I logged on earlier, and I was like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm okay. So I get on, and I take a few glances around, and at first, nothing's off, except these signs and these were called a poopy face, I believe. And And I was rumored to have shit my pants.
Who would even say that about
And
you?
that's not even the end of it. They blamed it on Elias.
On Elias?
Yeah, for the theft of a G apple and netherite that Elias gave me.
Exactly.
So-
Why would he steal it back?
Yeah.
And then
I've been framed.
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A, come into your home.
Almost every person's
What?
like kingdom has had signs like this all over the place. They're not even that pretty. You know it's
Yeah.
not
That's so true. It could do so much better than this.
For real.
So we've
I
got
didn't even
two.
use that emoji.
I was about to say that doesn't seem like an emoji you would use.
Two framings. One was even left at my kingdom.
Wow. Actually, I want to check. They haven't taken my. Okay, all my animals are accounted for
we
at least
checked
in here.
earlier, but I didn't check your secret place because I didn't want to.
I was there.
They've definitely taken my iron.
Yeah, we got iron taken from us. I got sugarcane taken.
They didn't even take
okay.
my iron ingots. They took all of my blocks of iron.
Same.
I think they took all of my diamonds. They took all my expensive shit. What the fuck?
They took my diamonds too, but not my like emeralds or anything. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Or wait, they might have actually. But okay, so here's the thing. Now my perspective. I log in, same thing.
They
I
took
see
some of my
things stolen.
tools. Oh, they took my diamond sword.
Ooh. Oh, that's it.
Wait.
We're going to war.
Oh my, those motherfuckers.
Yeah, see, I knew there was stuff missing in here, but I didn't
They
know
took
what it was.
all of my netherite, literally all of my netherite, all of my netherite tools, all of my netherite
wow,
in general.
Okay, so
we're lawyering up.
yeah, lawyer up.
Lawyering up.
Yeah, no, okay, so that makes me feel better, because I
Who's
couldn't,
honored?
okay, so
Okay.
I couldn't tell if stuff was stolen from me, because my chest got blown up. Because Honey came over to
I'm
apparently
surprised
bring-
Honey didn't take my splash potions of healing. I don't know what else
That
was
is
missing in here, but...
Yeah, because Honey came over to bring me gold, apparently, but then all my chests got blown up on accident by a creeper, so that when they put stuff back, I couldn't tell if they had stolen anything or not, assuming that's who the culprit is. But yeah, definitely stuff was taken from me, too. I just don't know exactly what it is, because I'm not organized.
Right.
Personally,
I'm
I think it
organized,
was
but I have
funny.
so much shit
Funny
that I
tried
have no
mugging
idea.
Yeah, so then we investigated, right?
Funny tried mugging you?
Yeah, I almost got mugged.
With a
There was
mug?
one night where,
With
like a shank in
Oh.
the back of the alley.
That's not good.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, in my own kingdom as well. It was awful.
Oh my god, in your own kingdom. That's just the audacity.
How do you guys do the crowns, by the way? Can you show me?
Oh yeah. So, it's just renaming it in a anvil. For mine, I did emerald crown, so I'm assuming if you want any different color, you would just do the like diamond crown or whatever. And I think you can do any type of helmet. I did a diamond one.
That's
Can
what
you
you're wearing right
confirm?
now?
Yeah, so mine's
Yep.
a diamond helmet or whatever that I put in an anvil and I just put emerald crown. And then for my invisible stuff, I just put invisible and then whatever it is. So invisible chest plate, invisible leggings, and invisible boots.
Oh, wow.
That way I could still be naked because it doesn't fit me to wear armor.
Okay. I'll have to remember that, because I have one level right now.
Oh yeah, I'm working on making a XP farm thingy right now. So when it's done, you can exploit it all you want.
I feel like someone else had an XP farm.
I know 8 had the skeleton farm that I
have a
used.
zombie farm.
Oh, sorry, zombie farm that I used for a while, but this one's furnace based, so it should be automatic, which will be nice. Yeah, it'll just store up XP, and then whenever you go to it and take the stuff out, you'll get like tons of levels.
Okay, good. Patooey is out here, that's good.
Yeah, I don't think they found your stuff, but like I said, I didn't check yet, so. Oh, also my ally died.
Aww.
Yeah, and apparently when honey came and the creeper exploded, the ally exploded.
Well,
So,
you can just take another one then, since it died.
thank you.
What one do you have, 8? For the crown, by the way.
Mine's just named Crown.
Oh,
Ah.
One, 'cause I
Crown
just wanted the
Royal.
normal one.
Like
Whoa.
the alcohol.
Whoa.
Close my eyes.
Oh
close
my.
eyes.
I
Close
just
your
heard.
eyes.
I'm not looking. I'm just hearing.
I'm just hearing. It all looks the same to me.
Yeah, I think everything's here. I mean, admittedly, it's not super hidden, which is why I'm not.
Yeah, but I guess if
wouldn't
you
be
didn't know where
surprised.
to look for it, then
Yeah. Especially, that's why I don't want to plug this hole up. This, like, creeper hole, because I feel like this kind of distracts from it. It's like, distracts from it, huh?
You know
Okay.
me.
Honestly, I'm not too worried about what honey took from me other than the netherite stuff, because they took literally everything.
Good
Yeah.
donut, Levi.
Oh, get it! Yeah! Look at you having a little party in here.
oh yeah, these guys know how to get down.
They do.
Oh, that actually fit on the beat pretty well.
That did. That went really well.
Wait.
Is it Bob?
Levi.
Yeah.
You have the Kingdoms SMP back on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Artist, I
Huh.
DM'd you something.
Okay.
This is gonna be wild. If you
Oh,
put that
no.
in chat, it should work. No, it's nothing bad. It's really cool actually.
Okay. Okay.
Does it work? No! Grr!
Grr.
What were you gonna do?
What does it look like on your end?
Just a pumpkin with a smiley face?
Miley.
So it's supposed to be a nicer pumpkin. Oh. On my screen, it's those missing textures.
Oh,
You know how the missing texture cube looks?
yeah. Wait, you have one named Pumpkin.
Yeah. There's also corpse.
Corpse.
Little star. Beef.
Flesh. What is the context of these guys' names?
They were all named after what they were carrying. Well,
Yeah.
For the most part, right?
Yep. Pumpkin was carrying pumpkin pie.
Yeah, I remember giving them pumpkin pie because that used to be my main source of food.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped. Make them have a lay sex. Oh fuck, I didn't mean to hit it. My bad.
I don't remember what they eat. I think they eat cookies.
It's oh no, it's
don't
amethyst.
use-
Oh, right.
Or amethyst shards, but yeah.
I don't have any on me.
I think I had some inside, maybe? Let me go look. Never mind, maybe I don't.
discs for everyone.
Whee! I did not have any amethyst.
Ah, that's okay.
I mean, I have some.
Yeah, we could do another time. But now back to brass tacks. Sorry about the brief intermission.
Of course. It's okay. It was a good intermission.
Anyways,
Thank you. Yeah, so we investigated.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, so we first. Sorry, I thought you were gonna go. I
thought you were gonna go.
Oh, okay. So we went to Honey's and Funny's first because we suspected it was Funny.
Uh-huh.
Funny was doing some funny business.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
You
also,
take-
your stall was shroomed as well.
Oh yeah, your stall was shroomed.
What do you mean?
And I thought the
You've been
picture.
shroomed sign.
Oh.
It was also at Queen's.
Huh.
Queen's Outpost. That is.
Yeah, it was like all over the place.
Hmm.
Trying to frame 8, man. It's crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They tried
Yeah.
to turn me against us against each other.
Yeah,
My
we
own
went and
brother.
investigated all the
I
places.
would never turn against my little
We
brother.
might have stolen from them as
Mwah,
we
cheek
investigated.
kiss. Of course.
That's true, we did kind of steal a little bit.
We
but
might have just
all's
Deserved.
fair in love and
I
war.
definitely earned this goat horn though.
Mhm.
Just so you know. And the disc,
Okay.
and the skulk, and the
Mhm.
redstone, and
Mhm.
the enchanted book, and
Mhm.
yeah. I only stole like one thing from each person. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
That's fair.
It's fine. Yeah. Yeah. So, after our investigation, we've concluded that I don't think we came to a conclusion because we just wanted to tell you everything.
Yeah.
So is it still an open investigation?
Mhm.
Yeah. We
Okay.
would like your input.
Okay. Well,
We're scared we're being double crossed by Honey.
Right. Because
huh.
Honey never technically, like,
There was no real
allianced
pact.
with everyone. I remember them saying that we had nothing to worry about, but
That's just a verbal
Mhm.
contract, and that can be broken.
Very true. That's why at the beginning of everything I mentioned that people should do physical contracts.
these boots can't be
They're
broken.
made for walking.
They are
Exactly.
made for walking.
Uh-huh. Right.
Is that just what they'll do?
That's
That
just
is what
what
that is.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. It's tough because I know 8 was so convinced it was funny, but I mean, Honey accidentally left proof at my place because the creeper exploded. If he didn't, then we might not have never known.
Mm-hmm.
Never have known. Never have known.
There's some contraband.
Oh, thank you.
Because I placed down the pumpkin that
Wait.
I had you spawn in.
How'd you make the heads at spawn? Was that in creative or can you do it in survival? The player heads.
Oh.
I did it in survival, just the command.
Oh, command. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about putting dead people's heads around my base or something. Just intimidating. But that's okay. That's okay. I'll stick to skeletons or something.
Hello. Well, if we want to try to maybe like look around a bit more, I kind of want to get in on the thievery possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love
Alright.
stealing.
Do we want to
I
go?
love investigating.
Want to go poke around then?
Yeah, let's poke around. Let's poke
Alright.
around.
Where should we go first?
Oh, another funny thing. When we first came through your portal to come investigate,
Mm-hmm.
we landed in your house and then looked and there was no portal behind us and got so confused. I have no idea why it did that.
My area is
Probably
just that
gonna be
magical.
this clip. Yeah, probably.
It looks so good, by the way. I haven't
It
been over
does.
here in a long time.
Thank you.
After you.
Thank you.
You good?
Gotta drop down. Whoppa!
Oh, how'd you?
Did you
oh,
break this portal up here before? Oh, I thought.
Whose
it
is
was
that?
you broke it.
Yours.
Yours.
what?
It made a new one for
You've
some
double
reason.
portals.
Oh, that's weird.
At one of the points where we or someone went through.
Oh, jeez.
Nice.
Thank you.
Where are we gonna go first? Should we confront Honey? Or
Hmm.
should we be subtle?
Let's be subtle, I think.
Okay, okay. Where are we going?
Trying to think. You Why is there a button there?
I don't know, but I press it every time. They do this every year.
Where have you guys gone? I know you guys have obviously went to the Flower Kingdom.
We went like everywhere, I think. I don't really know.
Seven.
Hi, Queen.
I'm like,
Queen just popped in chat.
Hi, Queen.
Queen.
Do we want
Are
to?
you aware there's crime?
Do we want to go this way first? Hit everyone on this end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
Number one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, 'cause Queen said, Queen, we are
Come on, Queen.
invading.
Yeah, Queen will witness it.
If you
Got cut off. Did some stealing of sand, gravel, and diorite. Very fair.
bone meal.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna tell you what happened first of all. So I came here, right? And this right here, oh, you're tall. So this axolotl right here, it's not always an axolotl. Earlier, it was the shroomed sign, and I
Oh my
changed it
God.
I changed it to the axolotl.
You're so sweet. So kind.
I truly try.
I gotta upload more custom paintings.
I haven't done any custom paintings. I need to get on that. I was thinking about that earlier today. I have to do some decorating in my house.
Yeah. If you look through the players uploaded ones, I uploaded the fan art of me, you, Finn, and 8. That I love
Hell
so
yeah.
much.
The more I look at it, the more I hate it. So I don't look at it.
No, it's so good. Draw more of us.
I think stream's lagging because Queen just caught up. Who ate my damn cake? Also, Queen says
I think
that
it was the
that they
crime.
took some of your diorite.
Who's
Who?
mine?
Yeah,
Wow.
Damn it, Queen.
Imagine
you had
being a criminal.
you had lots
Oh my
of
gosh, I
diorite.
know exactly which one you're on about. Gosh, heck, I needed that.
I have
You know what?
Gosh
Punishment.
darn it!
You know what?
Whoa.
Punishment.
Oh, there's
I
another
need my
cake.
cart.
Well,
I'm kind of tempted to take this invisibility potion.
You know what?
mean,
Punishment. Taking the
got
Flower Forest
witnesses.
documents.
That's the only thing stopping me right now is the witness.
yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. Hey, Queen, can you like log off for a second?
Can you close your eyes?
Yeah, we're not
Ah,
doing anything weird, don't
damn.
worry.
Queen is an E-chest.
Oh, word.
Yeah.
See,
Hit all the good shit.
Can we plan to go to the end together? Because I really need shulker boxes. and
Yes, absolutely. I keep
It's just-
wanting to, but I'm terrified to go alone.
It's
I
so
wanna
far.
get yeah, I wanna get what is it? I wanna get the fucking yeah, I wanna get an elytra
yeah.
too.
That too. Well, honestly, I kind of don't because it's not in character at all. I like to
Oh,
climb.
it's in my character.
That's
Oh,
why
I forced
that
it
is.
in there.
yeah.
The beds.
Oh wait, we never checked Cool's place.
All your days.
Wait, where's school?
Not here anymore. What the fuck?
Hmm?
Cool.
Would he move?
I don't know. Does he exist?
Is he real?
Is this the
Real life. Is it just fantasy? Landslide.
Because the
Okay.
entrance used to be like right over here.
I didn't realize he was over here.
Ah, I found it.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah.
What a
Sorry,
sneaky
Cool.
sneak.
I'm not.
That's fair.
Get fucked, Cool.
I feed him.
Oh, like.
Do you?
Yeah, when Cool first joined, I needed stone and he needed meat to eat.
All the fucking cobwebs. Look at this fucking spider motherfucker.
I'm suspicious of that, but I will go back for it. Oh. Well, I can't mine stone, but I know there's stuff behind that.
I don't have any of my belongings.
Wow. Imagine.
I've been thieved.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I was just gonna call you lazy, but yeah. There's...
A zombie villager.
Yeah, there's stuff behind this somewhere.
Yeah, go crazy. Go crazy, go stupid. That was so in sync. Holy shit.
It's like this way more. Right here. Right here.
Oh!
Here.
Ow!
What'd you do? Stop dying.
Oh.
Well, that works too.
Oh, I found them!
You found the villagers?
Yep.
Oh, I forgot that goes across. Actually, yeah.
I also found his stuff.
Oh, interesting. Because I thought he was down more, but then he closed off the end, so I didn't know. Actually, I should have known with all the cobwebs around that was actually.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm stupid. Yeah, I remember going this way. There was nothing at the end ever. I just made that up. The rules.
The
Jungle
rules.
wood? How'd he get that? Oh, wait, I probably gave it.
You're so affronted and you gave it to him.
No, every time I see someone with, like, jungle stuff.
No, I was affronted on your behalf at first, and I was like, oh wait, they probably traded for it.
Yeah, we're neighbors. Of course I probably gave him some at some point.
Yeah.
Right, queen? Right? That's what happened, right, queen?
Right?
There's nothing
This is cool.
weird, nothing sus happening.
There's so many axolotls down here. Holy fuck. Got 4 in buckets. Some just wandering around. Do you have a... What is this? Oh, they're goggles. Those are cute. I like them.
Yeah.
I like your cut, G.
Whoa, careful.
I had to fulfill the bit.
That's fair.
I like your cut, G. Smack.
You can smack me.
I like your cut, G. Oh wait, turn
Oh, okay.
around.
There's so many cobwebs. Oh my god.
Really fulfilling the whole spider thing.
My guy, clean up after yourself. For real.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't see anything sus here.
No, I don't see anything worthwhile here either.
Yeah, no, nothing to steal either, in case anyone's...
Oh, there's a little amethyst bit over here.
Mm-hmm.
Little cluster.
So many webs.
Love amethyst. Oh my.
I love amethyst from Steven Universe.
Same. Realizing that he's a spider and seeing all these cobwebs kind of makes me icky.
So he like pooped everywhere? Is that what you're thinking?
No, just just the fact that this is like his lair or whatever. Oh, the sands.
Yeah, that's a little sus.
Yeah, it's kind of like the bits in movies or whatever when they don't realize that they're in the like home of a spider and then they realize and it's like too late and there are like big spider webs everywhere and then the spider descends.
And then all of a sudden they're being
Jesus.
eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would. That'd be kind of cool if Cool did that.
So true. Cool.
True.
Eat us.
That would
No.
No, we say oh, there's a creeper.
Oh man.
Where?
He walked off into the birch area up there. The birch and spruce. He did a full circle trying to look at you.
Llama. I like llamas.
You're not my patooey.
Oh yeah, wait, yeah, we got goats.
Oh yeah, we did. We did steal goats.
Is that how you got the horn, I'm assuming?
No. Well, yeah, same place, sorry. But not from a goat. It was already off the goat.
Oh,
in a
okay,
chest
okay.
Off the chain hook.
Whoa.
I want
Alright. I like turtles.
I like turtles.
Queen, I can, but I don't know what your exact height was. So I'd have to do it while you're on so we can mess around with it.
Yeah, Queen.
Because I have to do it with someone else on the server too, but because I don't know the exact heights of. Whoa, we have a visitor.
Plus, it won't work if the person isn't on.
Whoa.
True.
But I got 4 potatoes. Oh wait,
Oh.
did I hit
Yeah,
one of
right here.
these? I
Right
was
here.
gonna say. Well, I can't do nothing about that one. I don't have hoe.
Just put him in a chest.
See, the joke is I put it in the chest above the compost, and it got composted.
Compostable. How'd you get up there? Oh, jumpy.
Yeah, I'm a jumpy boy.
Imagine being tall.
Imagine being short.
What am I imagining now?
Yeah.
You being short.
No.
Uh-huh.
Imagine being.
Oh.
Really.
I don't wanna.
That's so fair.
Scary.
An existential crisis is not on today's to-do list.
So true.
Let's steal from this place next.
Yeah, I
Yeah!
Just like we go play steal from her, they rich or whatever.
Whoa! You and buttons.
Buttons are fun.
If you don't already, we should give you a button room.
Button room!
Sniffle. Sniffle, 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 sniffle.
Let's see. This place got garbage.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Wow.
This shit
You
nasty.
come into my home
This
and
shit's
insult my
stinky.
house?
Let's see what else they got. What's those? Tails!
Wrong.
Not even the
Yeah.
best Sonic character. What the
What?
fuck? I'm
Oh
kidding,
shit.
I'm queer. Of course I love Tails.
Good.
Let's see. Nasty.
Disgusting.
Disgusting.
Skateboard.
I'm reading a book.
What?
Okay.
People skateboard.
Skateboard.
You got a skateboard?
Yeah, I skate.
Yo, you want go skateboard?
Of course.
Skateboard.
Skateboard. Surfboard.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Skateboard.
We board.
So wait, where's your secret chests?
Yeah,
I
8.
can't tell you.
See, the joke is I don't have a secret chest area.
Mhm.
I need to make one.
What is... Fire.
Don't look in there. Don't look in that second one. Don't look at the right one. Don't.
Raise
Wait,
piece
I already
cake.
looked in the right one.
Don't look in the right one.
Why?
Mhm.
Oh,
Embarrassing.
oh, you know what? I know what you're doing.
What?
Up to. I know what you're up to.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
What would I be up to?
I'm not gonna say it. It's embarrassing. I'm invading!
Rah!
Ah, tear down the whole place.
Rah! My
Hey,
kingdom now.
Can you help me build a throne? I need a throne.
My
Yeah!
kingdom. My kingdom now.
Who wears
You
the
don't even-
you don't
even
Hold
fit
up,
the
hold up, I don't
aesthetic.
even wanna hear it.
Bitch,
It
you
look
don't even
cool
got-
though.
You don't even got that red and white.
I don't need to. I got green and red like
Here.
Christmas.
Nasty ass.
We mail.
I'm literally green and red
my
too.
hat,
But,
Levi.
oh, I like your hat. I like your hat.
Oh my
I like your
God.
hat. So where's your crown?
Whoa.
Where your crown at then?
It's not on you.
Where your clothes at?
See it.
Wait.
Fungi.
Fungi.
Whoa.
Piss boy.
How does that look like that?
What?
You can't even see my posture.
I didn't know.
How does that look like that? That's cool. How does that look like that?
My spear? I named it to a spear.
Whoa. Oh, whoa! That's cool. The crystals on the top, that's sick.
Diary.
Hey, don't look at my
Whoa!
diary!
A diary? Wait!
I want to write one.
Where is it?
I can't tell you.
What?
8 got mad at me.
Is it in 8's room?
Yeah.
Stop trying to look at where my diaries are.
What's this?
That's our alliance book.
True.
You literally read that one.
I'm gonna take a screenshot of it, though.
Oh yeah, Piss Boy 8. That was also what was. I'm Piss Boy.
Whoa, is this the diary?
Yeah, that makes sense,
That
though.
was my diary.
Whoa!
What the heck?
You scribble in your diary.
No, they took over my diary and they were writing in my diary and they called me a piss boy and they were saying that I shit myself and it was awful. Are you writing in my diary?
I would never. Fun guy.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta make the goat!
Whoa.
Come on, come here. Come here. Come here. Watch what I do. Come this way.
Yeah, guys outside. Yeah. I don't know why they're excited. I ran out of food.
Oh, here.
Thank you.
Even number. For me. Haha, odd number for you.
What? Bet.
Yummy.
Mm-hmm.
8! Spore got out! Well, anyways, this is his goat, and I also have a goat. And
wow, this area is cute.
his
Damn.
name is Spore.
Spore, get the
No.
fuck in there.
No!
Spore. He was so close too.
Get the fuck in there. Okay. There.
Whew.
Yeah. We took 2 goats, and then he got Spore, and I got Wrecker.
Wrecker.
Yeah. See, it's funny because he was a little menace, so I named him Wrecker, and I totally didn't realize that it was the Reckoning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so appropriate.
That is really appropriate. Oh.
Spore got out a...
What? Where?
I
He's
already
back
got
in
him
there
back
now.
in, but I'm just letting
Okay,
you
good.
know.
Yeah, we got him back in.
Spore is a troublemaker, just like Wrecker.
All of them are.
Now that's a sweeping generalization that one might call you racist for.
I'll call you racist to your face. You're racist.
Damn
it!
You know that? I don't know. Do you know that TikTok audio that's like, we don't
Obama's on the
speak of
train.
him, and then no, wait, no, not that one, not that one. That one's a good one though. No, the one where it's like, I don't even want to speak his name, and then the other guy's like, oh, well, I will. His name is Mike.
Yes, I love that one.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Obama's on the train. Obama's
on a train.
No, a bomb. Good. I hate Obama.
I hate Obama.
I'm not racist or anything.
I am. I love that one.
That's really funny to me.
Where you going?
I'm just looking around. It's
Okay,
been a
I
while
look
since I've
around with
been
you.
here.
Let's see what we can rob.
Yes. Oh, what? I don't know what I was talking about.
What's this house have?
Its own building materials, I'm pretty
Anything to rob?
Whoa, I could use some
Yeah.
of these. Oh, shit, they're gone.
It's its own building materials. I could use some of these. Oh wait, they're gone. I don't even remember what was in there.
I like this. Picasso.
Nah, not my favorite.
Okay. Never mind then. Not Picasso. Kindergarten
Picasso,
drawing
like
then.
a fucking Da Vinci?
Da Vinci. More like stick figure.
Why does that tree look like that?
That's a you problem.
He's like T-posing.
That's a stick figure if I've ever seen
That
one.
is a stick
Yeah.
figure.
That would be if I had to make a mad grove. That's what it would look like.
Whoa, what you gonna build here?
House.
Oh, house.
I need to populate the area with houses. Hosu, if you will. House.
House.
Hey yo,
Hey yo.
that's where the freaks hang out.
Hey, that's where you were for like an hour.
Exactly.
wanna
That's where
hear
it got the reputation.
Oh, okay.
Yo, ass is not allowed in my spawner.
Hello, can I come
Why you got
in?
chicken?
What?
There's some chicken
Ow.
in here.
Ew.
Oh shit, there is.
Some
Wow.
chicken.
No.
I'd say don't mind if I do, but I prefer the cooked food that I've been given.
Mm.
Bestie's got secrets back here.
No, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm. I
Just more
remember.
mine. You wanna come in?
Oh.
You wanna come see my?
I mean, now
my
I
mine
do,
mine?
because you blocked it off.
I'm digging my way out. Well, now I know an area I can burrow into if I ever want a hiding spot at Eats place. Good to know. Where'd they go?
Maybe. They're not here,
Guys.
for sure. Okay, they're here is what I meant to say.
Hello.
August, where are you? Above or below?
Above. So what is it? What? Oh,
Where's
be
my
careful.
husband?
August, careful. They eat meat.
what?
Yeah.
Oh, the fairies?
Yeah.
Oh.
What kind of
That's-
meat?
Any.
What about this dick?
I burrowed into a cave that I don't know if you know about, although you probably know about, and then I got lost and then I came out and you guys were gone.
Oh. Sounds awful.
It was interesting.
Okay.
Ah!
What?
Ah!
What?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I like this. This is cool looking. I like that design. That's cool.
Mhm.
That's cool. Who did that?
Who did that?
I like this. I like that. Picasso.
Yeah, the towns around me aren't really fully
Do you ever get confused with different media, like that you're like? So I'm currently playing an ASMR and a D&D campaign, and I was about to go. I could just light this up. It's so dark here, and then I'm like, oh, that's my D&D power, not my Minecraft power. Sometimes
yeah.
I just have those moments.
Yeah.
Silly me.
Silly Billy.
Who the hell is Billy?
Me.
What?
It's yes, the docs.
Mhm.
I have yet to finish my docs. I want to finish my docs so
Yeah,
bad.
same.
We should. I don't know
Come
how,
to a
but
dock
we should.
building stream.
Yeah, like help each other build stuff.
Ah!
Oh my god!
Alone.
I got this, guys. I got this. Watch what I do. Watch what I do. Why is it going after August? Oh wait, never mind. I don't actually know where it's going. Come on. Come on. Right here, right here. Okay. Go back
I'm
up.
hiding.
Buzzy.
Did you say something about my pussy?
Not yours.
The fuck you say?
I was talking about the phantom.
Okay, good.
Another one?
Better have been.
Like diamonds in the sky.
Who are we gonna rob next? I mean, investigate next.
who's next on the path, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then Ray. Wee.
I mean investigation.
Woo!
Yeah!
We're essentially, when you think about it, we're robbers masquerading as cops.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We're undercover robbers.
I love that.
Is it like worse undercover boss?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's actually just the American government.
Yeah.
Technically.
I mean,
Oh,
not
shit.
really, but
Lily.
Lily might be broke.
True.
Oh yeah, true. Well, we can go and we can.
Yeah, let's
we can go
investigate.
admire. I mean,
You know,
yeah.
investigations.
I'm not gonna talk about how I tried to punch 8 and failed.
Don't jump.
Do jump. Okay.
Earlier I jumped and 8 just followed me and died. I'm like, what are you doing?
We were panicking, okay?
Okay, so we might have been panicking at the disco a little bit.
Can't blame me when we were getting chased.
Right,
The raised bed. Poor avian.
Oh, true. I didn't even think of that.
I knew as soon as I saw the bed. Ooh, buried treasure map. Aw, shit, they got to it. Meow.
It's so scary.
Stop that.
Somebody come get her. She's dancing like a stripper. Somebody come tip her. She's dancing like a stripper. She's spilling all the liquor. I'm taking this cooked pork chop.
Wow. Wow, artist.
Mm-hmm.
We could just walk to my place.
I mean, in theory, yeah.
Ray time.
Ray time.
Bah.
Jump, 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 jump.
I wish I could fly still.
If I push you,
Not quite like that.
is that just something you could just relearn, right? Like,
Yeah, muscle memory.
Wings?
but like you could just use your arms.
I don't think my arms are that hollow.
Just flap
know.
really hard.
I jump pretty high and I don't have wings.
That's like leg muscles, though.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing.
My wings weren't connected to my arms.
Hey, you pushed me.
No. See, that's just. Hello, Ray.
Anyone have shears on them?
No.
Hear me
I
out.
usually do.
We take all of Ray's bells.
Every single one.
Every
That'd
single
be kind
one.
of a funny prank.
Right? Immediately pulls out the pickaxe.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know where they all are besides the ones in the chest, but let's do it.
I grabbed the 2 of the bells in a chest.
Checking all the covering all the bases.
If I see any in a room, I'll call you guys out since I don't have a pick.
Okay. Alright, there's nothing in the farms.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any.
Hey, I just said there's nothing in the farms! What are you doing? You don't trust me?
Fuck A.
Yeah. Gosh.
None in with the chickens.
Oh, there's right here. Right behind you. Silly.
Well, I was gonna leave and see it. So, you know what?
Sorry, I took your opportunity. Oh shit, I totally forgot about the murder mystery.
We're not
Whatever
allowed
the
to look at it fully yet.
What if there's bells in it?
What, they're planning it upstairs?
Yeah, come up.
Yeah, it's up here. Wait, you
is
just
really
you
cool.
just said we're not supposed to look at it yet. Then you
I mean,
said come up.
not fully. Like you. Can look at
Oh
the outside, you can't
shit!
look inside.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm fucking hyped for this.
Yeah, this is cool.
Little, I always wanted to play Professor Plum, and I feel like that said something about my sexuality.
Yeah.
and my
Oh my
gender
god,
and
we
all
should
that.
all
I
dress
still-
as Clue characters.
I still play Clue
Absolutely.
24/7 and I play Professor Plum.
Yeah, you
Same.
would.
Okay, all right. We gotta call them now so that we don't all show up as the same person, because that'd be embarrassing.
I mean, you can.
Well, we could also
can,
just
but, like,
we could also just call a color. We don't necessarily have to
Yeah.
be.
I'll be green and or Professor
yeah.
Plum.
Yeah. No, I don't really care. You could.
I'll
do
probably go
whatever.
with
Red.
probably.
I
Or
could do
blue.
yellow.
I think my final answer is green.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do yellow. I'll do yellow.
I'll either do red or blue so I can make my particles match.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, that's fair.
More than likely blue because it'll be nicer. Eve.
Nice. I was. Hey, I was shutting that. My God. No respect.
Flash.
No respect around here. Find all
Nice,
the
man.
bells.
Oh, I'm dumb.
I have 2, so maybe?
I have to
Check
one.
downstairs.
Yeah, I just came downstairs. I'm looking.
Oh wait, we gotta check the village too.
Bells.
I can't let them have any bells.
Punishment.
There's a bell in here. I got this one.
Eat,
They
take the
better not
drugs.
have robbed from me. Finally, God, take my drugs back.
Get the drugs.
They are my drugs, to be fair.
To be fair.
Drugs.
I'm a dealer. What can I say?
Mm.
I don't want to go all the way down there. I'm lazy.
This lava bucket's chest is horrendously empty.
Oh.
I just realized. Ah! Oh yeah, I missed the props. Would you like it back, sir? Because I don't. Absolutely hate that shit.
Hello, sir.
What?
Hello, sailor.
What are you talking
to? Nurse.
I'm talking to the villagers
Oh,
below ground.
strange.
You don't talk to your people?
Yeah, what the fuck?
That's right, you don't. You just have fairies that have murderous tendencies.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were calling me gay.
Oh!
Well, that too.
I mean, yeah.
If the shoe fits.
There's a penis in this one.
What? I missed the penis.
Yeah, I don't know how you missed the penis. If you just go back here.
Oh my god!
Ah,
I
penis.
Hey! What? The only bell.
You know what?
Are you playing with Ray's penis?
Damn right.
Put all the
Actually, I
bells
shouldn't.
on the
Doesn't
dick.
Ray have a partner? I shouldn't do this.
I don't think that's relevant.
Nah, we gotta put all the bells on the dick, August.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
It's funny. I think we did a pretty good prank.
We did.
Who's next on the prank?
Gotta go back now. 'Cause this is the last.
What does Finn have?
Nothing.
Nothing but a really cool dock.
I'm also looking after his area.
That's fair. When will Finn return?
Probably,
Soon, I miss
yeah.
him.
I think soon, because,
Where'd he go?
Play.
yeah.
Canonically off doing king things and being really sexy and cool.
Finn went off to war.
Yeah, that is the canonical reason I made.
Boat, 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 boat. A boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat. A boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat. Boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat. Boat, a 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 boat. A boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat. A boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat. A boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat, a boat. A boat, a boat, a boat. I was
waiting for you. I didn't realize you already went through the portal. I was a little stupid.
It's okay. I was singing the boat song.
Oh, how's it go?
The boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat. It's like, what the fuck? Having suffered through the entire boat song. The boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat. The boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat. The boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat,
Why
the
do you
boat.
hate boats?
The boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the boat, the
I
boat, the
haven't
boat.
built any
The
yet.
boat, the boat.
They're really hard
The
to
boat, the
build.
boat.
That's
The
so
boat,
fair.
the boat, the boat, the boat, the
I'm
boat,
gonna
the
put
boat,
some
the boat.
boats in
Let's
my
rob
river.
this place.
I mean, technically I already looked, but most people emptied their stuff for it. They were
Aw,
smart.
that is smart.
I mean,
I didn't have anything at spawn, otherwise I would have.
I took my iron, but I left my cocoa and my bamboo because I don't give a shit.
Yeah, same. All the stuff in mine are, like, not important. Except my llama and my cow. Oh, okay. That reminds me. So you see how this is Funny's place?
Yeah.
Funny had their place covered up. Like,
I think we
with
should rob them.
netherrack.
Ah, I was wondering why the flowers were gone. That's why I stopped and was really confused.
Yeah, because I had torn it all out in a mad rampage because I was on a rampage earlier. I get really angry sometimes.
It's okay. Me too, 8. Me too.
Yeah.
Alright. Shh, gotta be careful. Gotta be careful. We don't know where it is.
I don't think they're around.
Let's just err on the side of caution just in case.
That's my name.
We
That is not-
definitely were cautious earlier, right?
Just keep an eye out for a name tag just in case.
Yeah.
What the?
Oh, that's the door. I didn't know there was a door here.
I know, I kept forgetting.
Whoops.
Should we disclose? Oh yeah, look. We also found this, which was like, made us think like, well, maybe it's not funny, because someone's threatening funny too, you know?
That could be separate though.
Right. We don't know.
Well, I was here earlier.
Yeah, I could.
I may have planted those signs. And I also changed these signs back to being normal. Previously they were in fact oh, I also robbed Funny already of a lot.
Yeah, I just took the invisibility potion.
Yeah. You wanna see something, August?
Yeah.
Oh,
Funny.
Shit up here.
Because I was on a mad rampage earlier.
So there's secret stuff, and then there's secret stuff.
There's secret stuff?
Crazy, right? Crazy.
Oh shit. Oh shit. Aw, the spleef. I gotta leave that. I can't take that. What's this? Oh, to-do list. Okay.
To do kill us. How do you make candles?
Oh, honey. Ooh, oh boy.
Fuck.
But
Good.
yeah, so back here is where the secret stuff is.
Pants.
I know, evil.
So yeah, there was some really good stuff, but we might have took some of it.
I don't blame you.
That would have been epic. Crazy. Yeah, these are.
Whoa!
What?
So much honey. I mean, that makes sense, but like, wow.
Might have took some for some candles. I want to make some candles.
Wow.
Because candles in the jungle is a really good idea, you know, to burn everything down.
Yeah.
I don't see honey.
I don't either.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
scared.
think honey's here right now.
I saw them leaving Queens earlier, but that we were just there, so I don't think that's where they are.
This place is definitely upgraded since the last time I was here.
Yeah, looks pretty cool.
That's why honey shouldn't be the ruler.
Yeah. Should we negotiate for our stuff back?
Well, I DM'd honey just being like, the only stuff I want back is my netherite.
Yeah.
Like my netherite stuff, because it's really the only stuff that I would have to like take a while to get back.
Them. If they're gonna be this much of a thief, I feel like we want them on our side.
True.
We should look.
Oh damn, slime boy.
Gimme! I have looting.
Yeah, go get him.
Get the ass. Ah! Okay.
I can find a bed, I'll go to sleep.
Oh yeah, I don't think I ever reset my.
Hmm?
Fuck you.
Where are you guys? Oh, there you are.
Me up here. I'm a joker. I'm a smoker. I'm a millionaire.
Did he give you a
The
potato?
skeleton. Ah, fuck! Fuck flowers. Fuck flowers. Fuck flowers. Fuck flowers.
Don't
Fuck
do
flowers.
that.
Oh yeah, isn't that a cute little thing? There's nothing really in it though.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out. If we every reckoning decide to do this investigating that we do, I think we should have like a proper name, and we should leave a
What, for our
calling
little
card.
group?
Yeah, we should leave a calling card. You know, like the bad boys or something stupid. You know, and, like we just like leave a sign every time we, you know.
Did someone do these chickens?
Yeah, it was Honey themselves.
I mean, you can't. Every time you pick up an egg, you can't tell me you can't resist just throwing it. You know.
That's fair. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with the whole name thing. We should definitely figure it out. And I feel like it shouldn't be like something super, super simple as well.
Oh yeah, no, it doesn't have to be the bad boys. I was just giving an example.
No, yeah, I just think like it should be something that takes a minute to figure out, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Investing gators.
Investing
in
gators. Oh, Queen missed the fact that they've got a ton of dye right here.
That's good, because I stole back some of my diorite. I mean,
Oh yeah, they also got shroomed.
What?
Yeah, I know they did, which is why I was confused.
Down here. See it?
Yeah.
All of them were, remember? And then you switched them?
Yeah, I didn't know there was one in the downstairs. I also have video evidence.
That they've all been shroomed.
Yeah. See, But
and
yeah,
I just
so
changed them.
does that mean that Funny did the stealing? Or no, Honey did the stealing, but Funny was the wait, no, sorry. Hold on. Honey did the stealing, but Funny was the shroom person?
Could be.
Multiple crimes. I think that's our problem with the investigation. We're trying to pin it all on one person, but multiple people did the crime.
True,
and
true.
People are gonna do the time.
I love you guys. You're so rainbow beautiful.
Gay.
Gay.
They look too much like mushrooms.
Oh, you got so defensive. That's terrifying.
True.
Take a breath.
Wait, do all cows look like this?
I don't remember. I think it's just in like flowery biomes.
Oh, that makes sense, because mine do not look like this.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little confused.
Bad. Alright, next place?
Next place.
The boners.
The boners!
That's good. That's good.
It's like the boner cast, but better.
I like that one.
That's a good one, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
Whoa, that's cool. Wait, do you guys know there's a portal under this?
Hmm?
There's a portal under here. Okay, there's a hash slab. You can see that there's a portal.
Oh, whoa.
It probably doesn't, well, I think we should look anyway. Cause
Yeah. Let's go check it out.
No, it's not a real portal.
No?
Fuck.
Huh.
Uh-oh. I'm scared. This place is scary and it's mean and this is so much warmer than Mycelia. It's not dropping.
Oh, no. Guys, you okay?
It's so scary.
Maybe.
That place
Oh,
is
run.
scary. It's so much worse than Mycelia.
I don't know where they're going, but I want to check this out. Oh, wait, no, I know where this is. Never mind. I was like, wait, what place is this? But I remember. We're good. Right, that's
Where are
that.
you going?
Okay. I was just checking something.
Wait, hold on. There
Oh
We...
yeah, all these holes in the walls were caused by me. Got a bit upset.
Oh, whoa. What an upgrade. Whose is this?
Blitz.
Oh, Blitz.
we go.
You fancy. Although my head hits the top when I go down those stairs.
Yeah, you and Ray.
I'm not as tall as Ray, though. So, can't complain that much. Oh, I can't even... Can I? Wait. Oh, we're okay. I didn't realize that jumping doesn't hurt you on the things. Whoa! Oh, I've made this build.
Where'd they keep all the good stuff? We didn't find anything last time. Did we?
Yeah, it's gotta be somewhere if you didn't find it.
There's redstone torches down here.
If they were busy building this place, do they have another house somewhere?
Not yet.
Wait, there's something right near here, though.
Yeah, it's a layout for a larger building.
Oh. So nothing actually is down there yet?
Yeah.
What about chests?
Nothing. I'm the king of the castle. I'm the king of the castle. La 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 la. I'm the king of the castle.
No, you're not.
Yeah,
No, you're not.
Real high.
You're definitely high on something if you think you're the king of the castle.
Yeah, I literally do drugs, August. I used to sell acid tablets.
Oh, hello. Oh, you pushed me. What the fuck?
Hey.
Oh, I can't see.
Ah.
I'm blind.
The creepers got us love again.
I'm stuck in a
Ow.
hole.
Where are you? Yeah, there's stuff has to be somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, what's this? Ah, mine.
Wait, don't go in.
So way back
Go in the
into
hole
mine.
I just went and fell in. Don't fall in that. Don't fall in that hole. Who lights up their place with redstone torches?
Blitz, apparently.
Ah!
What'd you do?
There's a grieber.
Oh, let me get it.
Thank you. I don't know where it is anymore. Hmm.
There's a furnace.
You're a furnace.
What the fuck did you just call me?
Oh my goodness, I see a snow golem path. Shut up, stomach.
Was it Arctic?
Eat.
I don't know. I don't even know if I have to eat. Or if it's just my stomach being loud just for the sake of it.
Wait, that's fair.
Oh, I haven't taken my meds.
What?
Oh shit, I also forgot to take mine.
I haven't taken them in like a week.
Take your
I know I'm
fucking
out of
meds.
all of them but one.
But like, my friend made a really good point because I told them I didn't take my meds in a week because like I've been so busy, but I have been drinking a lot, and they were like, "Well, that's probably good that you've been drinking and not on your meds when you're drinking." So like, I think it's a good thing, you know?
Yeah, that's at least something.
Like water or alcohol?
Alcohol, water's
Oh.
fine with my meds.
Yeah, they're actually low-key an alcoholic. I'm sorry you're
Yeah.
finding out like this.
Yeah, it's true. I turned 21, and then I realized I could buy my own, and it's been a downhill spiral ever since.
Okay, August may be the recovering alcoholic on this SMP, but Levi is an actual alcoholic in real life.
Period.
I'm so
It's okay.
confounded. Where
I haven't
where
had
the
any
hell?
alcohol in 2 days.
I had some yesterday.
Oh my gosh, bestie, and you're calling me the alcoholic?
It was just a jello shot. It was. It was. It was very alcoholic though.
Yeah, no, jello shots.
Even the person that made it was like, I put way too much in these.
What?
I'm sorry.
Oh my god, I met this kid. You know that like not disease or whatever. I guess you could call it a disease, but where your skin is like extra stretchy.
Oh yeah.
Condition.
Yeah, so I met this random kid and he was like showing me, like he was pulling his cheeks apart, and then he's
Oh.
wait, I hate how I said that.
Ugh.
He was like pulling his skin, and then he's like, yeah, you should see my foreskin.
What?
A guy would experiment with that. Fucking
Yeah, but then he
unbelievable.
was like, just kidding. They took that when I was born. I was like, aw, you poor thing.
You poor thing. What the fuck, Blitz? Where's your shit? It's not down at the like layout, right?
No, it's not.
Litsy witsy.
Wait.
Where your shit?
Oh, never mind. This is all empty. Never mind.
Where yo shit? I circled this place and I didn't see anything.
I honestly didn't even know this chest room is here, and I really thought I found it, but no. I really thought I was onto something there.
Damn.
Damn. How do you build this much and not have anything laying around?
That's what I'm saying. They've got to have a
Let's just
separate
tear the thing
area.
down. Maybe. Nope.
Bah.
Put everything away, like hidden.
Must be.
Well, that's what we're trying to find. Where is it?
Knock knock.
Where is it?
Is the Girl Scouts?
I don't
I
want
see you.
cookies.
Oh, I'm not selling cookies.
What are you selling?
I'm selling lollipops.
I'm wearing lollipops.
What? I'm sorry. Some weirdo was screaming.
Oh my gosh. Nate, are you burning the place down?
No.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Would you like some lollipops?
Let me peek at. Lollipop?
Lollipop.
Can I see the lollipop?
Yes. Let me go get them. I keep them over here.
Oh,
I feel like I should intervene.
No. I'm getting lollipop. This is lollipop.
that doesn't look like a lollipop. That looks like a spade.
Well, this isn't a deck of cards.
That looks like I think it's a shovel.
No, it's lollipop. Look,
Can I-
it's good. It's
can I-
good.
Can I take a gander?
Hold on. Let me get a new lollipop, cause rabies.
Oh, okay. I don't have rabies, do you?
But yeah, maybe.
Oh, that's not good. You see your vaccinations?
Don't worry about me and my vaccinations.
Don't tell me you're one of those.
I am named Karen with lollipop. Here's lollipop.
Whoa. What was in that lollipop?
You're slurping.
Lollipop. Oh, you didn't pay me. Can I come in now? But lollipop.
Good fucking luck. You'll never find moi. No. What the fuck?
Hello.
Oh god. Once enough. Oh, snost.
Hello.
Whoa, my god, that scared the shit out of me. I'm just an innocent bystander.
The lollipop accident of 23.
Of 23. Oh, you're just casually taking their coal.
Coal
I mean,
schmoll.
it's something.
Well, 8 is now one with the ground.
Meow.
Where'd you
I
go?
mean, was 8 ever not one with the ground? 'Cause
That's a good point.
just-
Wait, what is this?
Yeah, I am a little bit insane.
Floating.
What the fuck?
My condominium.
Whee!
Your condom, what?
My condominium to blitz for going through their stuff. Did I tell you guys that recently?
Catch me! Ow.
Wow.
You didn't catch me.
Oh, my bad.
I think I might have
recently
broken something.
gaslighted my Spanish class into thinking I don't think that sprinklers are real.
Like,
I don't believe in a sprinkler. Yeah, I think I told
It's
you that
fine.
the other day.
Ow.
1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4.
Did you add that one?
More. Yeah, that one's me.
That one's cute.
5, 6.
What'd you add? What'd you add?
My actual
Mushroom.
photos.
Fuck.
I'm just gonna use this to look at the photos. Zegs.
Sex.
Is not.
Wait, there's sex?
Elias when he gets called a bottom.
It's funny because it's true. I jumped out and I can't get back in. I can't find the entrance.
I definitely have to add some on here for sure.
I can't draw. I want ones of me.
Hey, you gotta finish the drawings, please.
Yeah.
I'll explode a family of 5. I'll explode.
I mean, I could just use that Minecraft wallpaper maker, but like, it's not the same.
Finish our marriage painting.
I'm gonna explode. If I keep getting talked to about drawing, I'll explode.
Okay.
I'm willing to take that risk.
We'll go to the next place.
Ow. Fuck. Yeah.
Wee.
Sorry, I accidentally popped my elbow out of place.
Ooh.
I have really weak bones. Hey, that's not nice.
Bone.
I was on about my real life bones. But my family re-found out that I have a vitamin D deficiency.
Oh.
Vitamin D's nuts.
Yeah. I have to take like really high supplements. You know, the ones that they start you off on, where they're like 500,000.
500.
Snowy slopes.
Are we gonna go? Are we gonna go?
We'll go.
I think we should, cause there's something
Yeah.
that Gotagus wants.
Is there? Okay.
Are you verified in the eyes of God?
No.
Are you verified on Twitter?
No. That costs money now. Fucking Elon Musk.
Recently that he randomly got verified for being like a legacy or something. He's like, oh, I wonder how long this will last. It's not like he's just Luke Skywalker or the Joker or anything.
Yeah, you know, nothing big.
Yeah.
This feels so far away. Yeah, my ear itches.
Better go fetch it.
Whee!
Oh, hello.
Horn. That's horrendous. I don't want that.
1, 2. Wait, stop.
What the?
Is Honey here?
No. No.
Here. Oh, what is?
Get that. 1, 2. Buckle my shoe. I apologize.
No!
What do you mean? You don't want this?
Oh,
Why not?
because it's disgusting.
Disgusting.
Whoa, did you kill? Oh! Oh my god! It's horrendous! I'm
Hey, you
watching a
don't see that.
massacre!
Wait,
I
what are
don't
you?
kill.
Why would you? Why?
Because they didn't have horns.
That makes sense, actually.
And they were flooding the place.
I know what it
Flooding
is.
the basement.
Up.
Buckle my...
I said fuck and he just went.
I wonder where Honey's been AFK this entire time then.
That is a good question. Rad. habits.
I don't want to.
Stop.
It's okay. Your 1-2 thing has been. Wait, hold on. Let me try that again. My 1-2 thing for the week has been. What if it were purple? Just everything.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. I want to build with copper now that I'm seeing everyone else use it, but I don't. It just doesn't really fit the theme.
I might use it for one of my builds, but I don't know what else I'm gonna build other than like a bee area eventually.
Yeah. I think copper would definitely fit your scheme a little bit.
Yeah.
Got that.
Like what side you want on that side.
Only one of them's got one horn.
Might be, bro.
Oh.
Square up.
Check out my new shoe. There's a brand new.
What the fuck?
Buckle my shoes, 3, 4, buckle some more, 5, 6, Nike kicks.
That one's obsessed with you.
Fire.
I love
Oh, they kissing.
And they were both boys.
Yeah, probably.
And they were gay. Ooh. No. Someone outside my window yelled, "Help me!"
Well,
But you
are
know,
gonna?
much more feminine and scream-like.
Oh yeah.
No, I refuse to help anyone that screams on this campus because they scream so often.
That's fair.
It's like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
Except if they are ever right, I will just flip them off. Because at that point, they've dug their own grave.
1, 2, buckle my shoe, 3, 4, buckle more, 5, Nike kicks.
That is so fire.
That is so fire.
That is so fire.
So here's the thing: is now you're making me wanna say it.
I know, it's
Mutism.
so fun to say.
It rubbed off.
I know.
See, I have a friend with Tourette's, and so half the time I'll pick up his ticks and he'll pick up mine, and it's so freaking funny. It's very good.
Yeah.
I'll be.
I was rizzing up chat. And
That's
in
okay.
chat, I mean my girlfriend.
That's fair. I love just like. No, sorry. Go ahead.
She donated a sub to you.
Oh wait, me?
Ah!
Yeah.
My ass!
No one ever fucking looks at my chat, so I just stopped looking at it too.
Or not like to your channel, but a sub
Yeah, no, I know.
for me to
Sorry,
you.
yeah.
For
Mwah.
great.
Gracias.
Mwah.
Ah! What the? I wasn't ready.
Got the 1, 2.
Nah.
Buckle some more, 5, 6, Nike kicks. It's so fun.
Fuck you
Get
want.
mad, bro.
Fuck you want.
Get mad.
Get low. Get low, get low, get
Get
low.
low, get low, get low, get low, get low,
to the
get low.
window.
Window to the wall.
To the wall.
To the sun drop down.
Wait.
Oh, deep crawl.
Oh, excuse
Skeet,
me.
skeet,
Motherfucker.
motherfucker.
Oh, ski, damn.
Damn.
He was nodding his head along.
Yeah,
He knows what's up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does.
Got that.
Alright, are you ready. I'm ready. I'm so ready for this. I'm so ready this time.
Bitch.
Come on.
We
come on.
look like we're gonna get like we were just convicted of a crime.
The
The way we're all standing against the wall, we need like mug
line up on the
shots.
wall.
True. Alright, let's get this shot screenshot.
Hold on.
Oh wait, yeah,
Spread
we
'em.
gotta face this side, that's right. Wait, how
One
do we
photo.
take it?
Okay, I think I got one.
Okay, now wait.
Now face forward.
They're
But
on our-
fucking
they're in
bitch.
my way.
Bitch. Bitch.
Hold on. They fucked me up. Okay. Oh shit. Ah, rabbits. Got that.
Nice. I feel like he's ready. I feel it.
At least I have a mouse, but I don't have a lighter. Oh no. Feel my lip, cause I'ma have to fight her. Ah, shoot.
I'm gonna
Hit them
get
while
some
they wanna
ice
hit me.
cream. I'll be
I
back.
just got hydrate visioned.
Whoa!
Oh, I got a horn! I don't know
Oh,
what
see,
it is
I
though,
did
because I'm
that.
still
That
getting
was
ice
all me.
cream.
I was told to hydrate, but I don't have my water filled. I have like water from I think Friday. There's like a splash.
Ice cream,
Like,
ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream.
Get
Ice cream.
that.
Ice cream. Ice cream.
Come on,
Ice
give me, give me.
cream. Ice cream.
This dude is annoying.
That was some pretty good water.
Nom 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 ice cream.
Hey, don't punch him. That doesn't work.
I'm
No,
back.
it doesn't, because it just worked with that guy.
Oh, it's fucking Seek.
Well, I mean, I'll take C. I don't like that.
I'm gonna take Seek, it's gross.
I think Zeke's funny. We still gotta get a third one so we can all have different ones at the very least, because that one's
Yeah.
Zeke in there too.
Give me your horn.
Hey.
Ah!
Yeah, that's what you get.
I mean, it worked on this dude.
Get that one,
Get in your
two.
space. Get in your space. Get in your space.
Check out my new shoe. It's a brand new.
Mine too. Buckle my shoe. D4. Buckle some more. 9, 6. Buckle my kicks.
Check out my new shoe. It's a brand new.
Should we give them more room to run?
Probably not.
That's true.
Hey, they're gonna come, babe.
Make out. Make love. More
Make
goats.
Bubba's.
Oh my god. I just watched The Circle of Life.
Whoa. Love that movie.
Of life.
Hey, get mad, bro.
And it
Get mad at me.
moves the soul.
Don't punch them. I'm polite.
One Punch Man.
Wow.
Whoa!
You don't even have horns.
Damn. Fuck this guy. Get mad at me.
I doubt these motherfuckers even have the 1-2 buckle my shoe. Highly doubt they have the 3-4 buckle some more. And not even the
They
5-6
wish.
Nike kicks.
Absolutely not. Was I hit? I just
Yeah.
went
You were
into
hit.
my fucking folder.
Yeah.
Of course I did.
That's usually what happens. For a while, when I was farming goat horns on another server, that's what would happen with me.
Every time you stopped. Get hit.
Yeah. Every time I stopped paying attention. Ah! Stop paying attention. Sorry, I was yawning, so I had to scream.
That makes sense.
Goats are so funny looking.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pick them up. I should play with a goat in real life.
I love goats in real life. They're my 4th favorite animal.
Why only 4th?
Well, because there's 3 more that are better.
Oh, okay. What are the other 3?
Snakes, foxes.
Real.
I forgot the 3rd one, but I know the goats are 4.
Was it bees?
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Baby
Mhm.
bees.
I know my bestie.
Yeah, you do.
I didn't know the order, other than snakes, but I knew that foxes and bees were there, as well as snakes.
Yeah, that makes.
Stop humping me. Get the fuck out of here.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh, weirdos.
I'll send pictures. I think that guy would probably make the goats mad.
Who?
The villager, villager.
Maybe.
Thank you, 8.
No problem.
Ow.
Fuck. Was that me again?
Norman.
Oh, okay.
Oh, my knees hurt. Oh, what is that?
You leaving soon?
Probably. I'm getting a bit eeped.
Mm.
Wait, what? I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Ow, the baby got me.
The baby. Let's
The
go.
baby!
Let's go.
Broke out my
I was saying
ankles.
that I'll probably go to eat soon.
Oh,
See something crazy?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
fuck.
yeah. Do
Crazy.
it, I dare you.
Wax on. Wax off. Shit goes hard. Got that. 1, 2,
Buckle my shoe!
3, 4. Buckle some
Buckle
more. 5, 6.
You've got a beard.
Nike
I like
kicks.
that about you.
Respect.
Hug. Alright. I might head home.
I can't escape without.
Will you be back on after you eat or no?
Just leap him.
I'm eating.
I can't escape.
It's bedtime.
Oh, I thought you said eat with a T.
Guys.
It's 9 p.m. and I'm so eepy.
That
And I
sucks.
need
You.
to clean my room and I
Wow.
have teenager things to do.
Wait, you have
Whoops.
teenage things to do?
Yeah, not
You're
just
not a
everything.
teenager.
I mean,
You're a
real life, I am.
baby.
Ah, you can't hurt me! You can't hurt me!
16 August.
You're a baby.
You're what?
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Okay. It seems like Honey wants to hang out, so
This is true. Where? Oh, you're still here.
Yeah.
No, I know you started early, but I probably should stop stream soon. So,
Very fair.
what are you doing?
I don't know.
Okay.
Got that. I have to hold my tongue when I'm doing that now. Because I'm gonna keep repeating it.
No, let the echolalia win.
I can't win.
Oh, so today I had a rough cut viewing for my final project, my final short film, which is about this teenager that gets overstimulated at a family gathering. And so afterwards, we did like a what the I can't think of the words. But people like reviewed it and like gave advice and stuff. And then when they were all done, I just go, and that's a win for autism. It was very funny.
Owie hiccup.
Yeah, we're both pink.
That's fair. Okay, I'm gonna go AFK 1 second.
August
Stop
sent
my
me a
stream.
TikTok.
Did I?
A while ago, probably. At 8:51 a.m. Got that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got that. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 5, 3, 4.
Okay, back.
Welcome back.
Guess what?
What?
Oh wait, that was so perfect timing too.
I'm not alone
Wait,
on
do you-
the server for once. Hi guys! Bye guys!
Oh, bye.
Oh shit. Oh, bye.
I'll be back!
Bye.
I'll be back!
August, do you want Ponder?
You bleed.
I'll give you Ponder.
You. Yeah,
we
go.
have to greet each other with these from now on.
Yes.
Where'd they go?
Me and that way I got listening to that now. Me and that. Oh, I'm listening.
They went back. What?
Literally, I thought out of nowhere I wanted to listen to Me and the Devil, and then I realized, excuse me, I keep burping. I thought it was out of nowhere, but it was not out of nowhere. It was because the very opening of the song was playing, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna play that now. And I went and opened my Spotify, and I noticed it was playing, and I was like, oh, I'm silly goofy.
It's a really good song.
Who would have guessed?
I wish two people could be in a minecart. I want to wrap my arms around my bestie and ride the minecart.
That sounds
Yeah, wait,
very
why
homosexual.
aren't minecarts two people, but boats are? That's
To
bullshit.
keep homosexuals away from each other in the minecart.
Why haven't they made a thing where you can connect minecarts with chains? Because we have
Real.
chains. Like, I'm just such a good idea maker.
You are.
They should hire me at Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
At Mahjong.
I would say next time I do a mod pack server, I'll make sure that that's a thing, but I think I've been contemplating it, and I think next time I do one, it might be like a zombie apocalypse type thing.
Oh, that would be fucking hot too.
Right? Are you having fun?
Absolutely. Actually, before I get too burnt out, I'm gonna go grab
Oh,
shit because I said I would go netherite mining. Do you guys want to join?
Yes,
will
I
not
just
be fun.
I just need to get my stuff back from
Go
Honey.
the fuck to bed. Oh, there you are.
Ew.
I was just gonna go grab my stuff if you want to go netherite mining.
I'm gonna-
Bye, bitch.
Hey, I have to go to my actual house first.
Oh.
I'm not just gonna log
Okay,
out
I'll
in
walk
the
you
nether.
there.
I'm going to bed.
Okay.
It's my bedtime.
Wow, 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 wow,
I'm a
wow,
little
wow.
sleepy guy.
Wow,
Little
wow, wow.
sleepy guy!
Waka,
I'm
waka,
just a
waka,
bit
waka.
eeped. I'm a bit eeped out my mind. It's like 9:30. I gotta hit the hay, y'all.
Okay, bye. I don't want to walk you all the way.
Bye. That's fair.
Good night.
Bye. Have fun.
Yeah, my lip itches.
Hello.
Bitches.
Love you.
Here we go.
Boom. Hi.
Hi.
It's nice to meet you. Oh, that's a portal.
Have you guys not met?
No.
Not on the
Yeah,
server
I guess
now.
August hasn't been on. Yeah.
I've been on the server. I'm checking my statistics. Hang on. I've been on the server for a week, but I've been on the server for 3.48 days.
Hot.
I've been here for a week.
I'm not gonna die, right?
I won't hold my sword.
Where'd Bestie go?
I love when I stand next to the portal and not realize I didn't go through it.
I'm not gonna die, right?
Hey, Wrecker!
I am gonna die!
But, oh, I forgot about that. Sorry, August. You stay there. I'll be back.
Okay.
But
Who
peek
do I
through
go
the window
with?
and look at Wrecker.
Oh, honey, wait. The only stuff that I would want back is my netherite stuff, cause...
I'll get it back to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
cause the
I was
only...
just being a cheeky little shit.
That's fine. Just cause I think you took, like...
Everything.
Yeah.
I took everything.
Yeah,
I was like, is this lore stuff? I probably shouldn't take this.
The
Funny
only
looks like
netherite
it.
stuff that I have on me is the stuff I was wearing, so, like, none of my weapons are with
Yeah, I
me.
took all of them.
Yeah, so we've been
them.
running around and I have nothing.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I like hit everything. So, I think it was Levi broke into my house, like broke blocks in my house, and I logged on as he was like leaving my basement,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like, what the fuck? And then I couldn't talk because my fucking thing wasn't working. So I was like, wait, where did you go? And I didn't realize they were doing lore. I got sad. I thought they were ignoring me. You're gonna die.
Is he right there?
He's right there. He's
I'm gonna
not-
make a break for it. There's a man in there! Ah!
Oh no.
This is a
Oh,
precarious
no.
situation.
Hello, sir.
Oh,
Would you like to take a moment to learn about our Lord and Savior, and,
Jibbicrimme.
Jay Schlatt?
I am speed.
What are you?
I'm an evoker.
Oh.
Ow! He fucking bitch slapped me. Ah! The doors are closed! Don't touch me, motherfucker! I will put a restraining order out on your ass. Don't even try me.
Commit atrocities. I just got asked if I want a VC. No, but I can't say no. Yawn.
Pew, 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 pew.
I think I've had 5 hours of sleep in the past 48 hours.
Holy hell.
That's normal.
Well, if it's normal.
I mean, I get like 4 hours of sleep a day.
Oof.
Recently, I've been having trouble sleeping because of my breathing issues, so I'm like, oh.
Mm.
I also hope Levi isn't. You're not mad at me, right?
What?
I was trying to leave stuff at your house and a creeper blew up on
Oh,
me.
no, that's totally fine.
I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to like fix it.
No, it's fine. I honestly was planning to move those anyway, so I don't really care. Do you have a specific place that you want to start?
I had a place kind of near where I am, so I don't know if you want to just be around
Yeah,
here. or
wherever
not.
is fine. I can't
I don't-
mind, so
I don't have my shit on me. I kind of left it hoping I wouldn't think
that's
I would
okay.
die.
I brought a ton of wool and wood to start with, so
I can't do that because I'll explode and die immediately. I did it
Yeah.
last time.
it makes sense.
Do
You
you
just
go
lead the
down
way.
or do you go up?
I usually go down, but I'm open to whatever.
Oh. Oh. I don't know which way to go then. I already have a staircase up in one spot, so I mean, we could go there.
Yeah, let's go. And then if we don't have luck, we can always switch, but...
Yeah. I've been listening to the same really sad song on repeat all day.
That sounds about right for... What song?
Hitchcock by Ricci.
Ooh, okay.
Pretty good. I want to fix this. I was gonna ask if I have permission to fix this.
Yeah. No, I don't think, I mean, this is public transportation. You have complete permission to do whatever to it.
I'm gonna steal resources from everybody the next reckoning, and then I'm going to fix this.
Yeah, there you go.
Also, why are there so many holes in the walls?
That was 8.
Yeah, because your place was covered up.
Funny did that.
Yeah.
That was the whole plan.
I see. Well, it was foiled.
Damn. I should have blocked it in more. I knew it. Also, thanks for breaking into my house, loser.
Absolutely. We were investigating.
You weren't supposed to know canonically where that is. Is it this?
That is, well, I don't even know if 8 had been there before, but he found it anyway, so.
I think I've shown both of you because I trusted you guys.
Oh,
and I was
that's
kinda
fair.
like...
We were investigating because we knew that stuff was stolen, and also that there was a prankster doing mycelia posters.
Yeah.
Was that you as well?
Funny told me to do it, but it was Funny's idea completely.
See, that's what we thought. Like, we thought it was funny because we didn't think that. I don't know. That one just didn't seem like a you thing for some reason. So.
No.
All right. Which way do we start?
I started going this way, and then my pickaxe almost broke. So.
The only thing I know, hold on, let me figure out. Is that apparently you should go towards the chunk borders.
Mhm. Give me a second. I have a feeling.
Oh, wait, shit. Do you have a crafting table? I can make one.
I have wood on me.
I didn't, okay. Doesn't matter who, but I brought the wood and the wool, but I didn't actually bring a crafting table like a dumbass. So,
I have crafting table.
Okay.
Pop.
I'm just gonna pop home and get a pickaxe quick, because I feel useless just standing there. Keep the sticks with me in case I want to use them. Like it could be anywhere like this. Admittedly, I am feeling a little bit tired, but where's my mind?
Oh, holy shit.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm gonna go grab your stuff.
Okay, thank you. Wasn't this way? Was it? Nope. Buddy. Hey, baby.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
I wanted to start while you guys were gone, and I got one in, and then realized I couldn't mine. So that's why I need it. It's a split effort. I typically do, I think six blocks in.
I have literally never gone mining for netherite.
Ah, well, this is my method. You do, so from the end of the last explosion, you go 6 deep. 6? Yeah, and then you put a bed down, and then you put a cobblestone just so it doesn't completely blow you up, and then that's about it.
Huh.
Yeah. Do you want to use my pick? Would you prefer it?
This is fine.
Okay.
Because they're going to get my stuff, so.
That's true. Okay. Well, for now, we can practice. So yeah, from this, just continue the hallway.
Okay. This way?
Yeah.
Whee. I also have chunk borders on. I don't know if that helps or not.
And then you can stop, because... 1, 2... Yeah, this isn't at the border, but...
The border right here.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6... Yeah, so bed, and then cobble, and then you click and run. Or you fall into fire. One of the two happens. And then you search. While you were gone, I was actually looking for a texture pack that highlights ancient debris, because it'll be a lot easier.
Ooh.
Yeah. Do I want that one? Colored ancient debris. Let me see the images here. I think this one's fine. I'll just do this. I will send you the file if you happen to want it.
Sure.
It just makes it blue. Here, let me give you some beds too, so you don't have to just wait for me. Yeah. So just like, I think 6 or 7 I could do, and then... Do you have cobble?
Mm-mm.
Okay, here's some cobble. I just
Thank
put the
you.
cobble right in front of the bed so it doesn't...
So where am I putting the bed?
breaks.
Right on the edge of the chunk?
Just like... You just count a few, and then... You can just do it like right there. And then the cobble, and then click it.
Okay. A gwig.
Yeah, the chunk borders thing is like where you should make the tunnel.
Okay.
Or at least that's where they say that they spawn more, but...
Okay.
You want your stuff back?
Yes, please. Get out of here, fire. I'm a fireman. I'm in a
What?
sexy monthly calendar and everything.
I brought compensation for stealing your stuff as well. I hope it's okay.
Oh, you
I
didn't have
want
to do that.
compensation. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
I'll give
You're
you
not
compensation.
entitled to compensation. Get out of here.
What?
Yeah.
No. There's no commercial.
You're entitled to financial compensation.
Now, I don't know how I'll know if the texture pack is working. I guess, except if you financially.
Thank you.
I know you.
Desperately. Thank you.
I make a lot of charcoal because I do forest a lot.
Do you want to? Oh well, no wait, never mind.
What?
I was gonna say, do you want to start a separate one, but you don't want to
I can just
blow
go pick ass
yourself
mining.
up.
It's good.
Okay. I mean, I was just gonna say we work on the same tunnel together, and then every third one we get. If that made any sense.
Do
Whoa.
that if you want, but...
Wow.
Careful. I'm fine with whatever.
See, I'm really confused because I always have the sixth sense when it comes to ores, and with diamonds, I'm like super good with it. With netherite, not so much.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't know how the spawning works exactly. Sometimes I'll get like tons in a row, and then other times I don't. I go for a bit, and if I feel like it's not a lucky vein or like row, then I'll move on to something else.
Yeah.
Wee.
Oops, shit, not my intention. Just you hopping.
I'm a bunny.
Oops. Do you ever just make fun of a ship and then you see one thing about it and then you start liking it?
Oh,
Yes, or you're like not into it whatsoever in the like show or whatever, but
Yeah.
in the
With the
fandom,
fanfic.
yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so there was one from Mandalorian, because obviously that's like my current hyperfixation.
Mhm,
There was a
mhm.
ship where like the two characters only met like twice, and I was like, why would people ship this? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And then I
Right.
started
My
reading
beloved.
fanfic. What?
Rare Pears, my beloved.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I was like, why? I feel like people are forcing this, and then I
Thank you.
now I love it. Now I love it, and it's bad.
Wee. Oh, I missed. Yeah.
That's so much I could do.
Back.
That is just a hole.
I like holes.
We're in the nether. What do you mean is it a cave?
Well, like, there's another cave. Oh shit, that's like a hole. I see what you mean.
I'm so mad. I want an ancient debris so I can show off my funny little texture pack.
Oh yeah.
I have a rainbowed ancient debris texture pack.
Oh nice.
Ooh.
Yeah, I
Ugh.
literally just downloaded one that makes them blue just so that I can find them better, but
I'm blue. Da-ba-dee.
I know I watch one YouTuber that makes all ancient debris have a space
Whoa.
on it.
Go crazy,
I
go
love that.
stupid back there.
Yeah, you go crazy, go stupid.
Ah.
Oh my gosh, I love seeing all the red on the map.
Yeah.
Just the particles.
The barbigles.
I love how
The Patricks.
Funny was completely broke before I joined the server.
There's always that one person.
Ow!
What? I didn't do anything. Wasn't me.
You liar.
I was just standing there.
I don't think you were. I think you hit me.
No, I didn't.
I'm gonna divorce you for abuse.
Don't you dare.
Hello,
You're not allowed.
911.
Who put a torch there?
Hi. What holding torches? I don't know. I don't know, honestly. Who would do such a thing?
I think it was the ghast.
For real, for real.
Ah.
We might be too high.
Yeah, did you look at, we're at 120. Did you look at the spawning levels?
I know it's like a
Shit.
few blocks below.
Bedrock?
Yeah. I'll look it up right now.
Yeah, look it up just to be safe. Because, I mean, it's definitely rare, but we haven't seen it.
I only have 2 more beds, so I'm not gonna keep going.
I
until
mean, I
we
have
know.
tons of stuff. Don't worry about that, but... Let's see what they say. Actually, I don't have a ton left. I brought way more wood than wool. I can get some easily. But, here,
It
actually,
says
I'll
level
give...
14, but I know I used to mine in the ceiling when I would mine on my other servers. So.
Beds.
I'm gonna give you the rest of what I have, and then I'm gonna go back and get some more wool.
Okay.
I will be right back.
Okay.
If you guys switch to a different level, just let me know.
Okay. Bye bye, love you.
Bye-bye, love you.
Y8 to Y22, but you can find it in the ceiling. So if you want to switch up where we're mining, we can do that, but I just don't know how to get down to the floor.
Give me that. Baby. 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 Bed. Bed. Bed.
Going lower?
I think so.
Okay.
We just gotta... Do you want to lead the way? Where are you? Where are you? They're going this way, but where are they? Bestie. What the fuck?
What? What the fuck?
What the fuck?
So loud. What the fuck? So loud. Stop.
What the fuck? Marco! Oh, they're too far. Hold on. Good boy. Oh, they went through their portal. Fuck. Fuck off, you stupid. I got shot at by a bag of bones.
Homophobic.
Literally.
Don't mind me. I feel something. I have a hunch. And
What level? Why level 17? $15.
I hate my keyboard. I'll be back.
Okay. We're getting close. We're getting very close. This is like treacherous territory though. Like real fucking treacherous. Oh, we're so close. Come on.
There you are.
Betty!
Betty.
Baby!
Oh yeah, this is a
It's-
fun place to do it over a lava lake.
Yeah.
Or under, I should say. Where did Honey go?
Keyboard issues.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel bad because they said it's new too.
Oh, actually, let me pop up and see if there's like land that I can shoot for.
I mean, it looks like the way you're facing is gonna be land, so.
Okay, good. That's what I was trying for, but lava keeps popping in.
Yeah, I'd
But
say
that's-
go forward a bit and then start going down again.
Okay,
I think. But yeah.
that works. So it seems like the consensus is like level 17 around there.
Yeah, I think there's a specific level they said you will avoid the lava pools being above you, so I think go lower than what they say to do. But
Okay. Okay.
I'm not sure.
Oh. This is 17.
Okay. Getting there. Did you grab that crafting table from up there? If not, it's fine, I don't care.
I did not.
Okay. Not a big deal. I can make another one when we need it, but for now I have...
What do you think? Just steep enough? We're at 10.
Yeah, I would think so, and we can always go back up if we feel like it, but I think that'll be good for now.
What do you think? Just keep going this way?
Yeah, just start going forward now.
Okay.
Do you still have beds and stuff?
Yeep, yeep, yeep.
Okay.
I do gotta clear out my inventory at some point, though. Because holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of lava to throw it in. Whoa! Oh yeah, this is the only other problem, though, is you're gonna blow up a lot less with the basalt. But it looks like we might be getting out of that biome, so we might be okay.
Yeah.
If not, we can go, like, just mine forward for a bit and then do it again.
Mm-hmm. Ba-da-ba-does.
I see, oh, I see honey's coming back, and I also see that someone mined in front of us, so we could probably just exploit their tunnel and just make, like,
Oh yeah, I
silence
see
off of
that, I
it.
see that.
Oh, I see honey. Do they know that we went down here?
They were on the stairs before they started going back up.
Okay, hopefully they can find us. It looks like
Here
they
it
are on
is.
the right track. Perfect. Yeah, let's just make, like, little things off of this one. And actually, yeah, we can, like, right here is, like, a chunk border. So we could probably, like, start here and see where we go from there.
Okay. I'm just gonna...
Whoa, scary.
That staircase gave me a heart attack.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
It's a bit
Cool.
ramshackle, yeah.
I fixed it. Holy
Thank you.
My keyboard would have killed me if I went on that and it started, like,
Oh
hitting
god.
Yeah.
keys it
So where are we
wasn't
going? This way?
supposed
Right here, yeah.
Oh, right here? Okay.
Yeah.
Whee.
It looks like it'll be lucky for a little bit. We'll see. Maybe. Maybe not.
My map is still saying we're in Basalt Delta.
Yeah.
Actually, let's follow this line and see if it says we're in anywhere else. Ba-da-ba-does. Jesus fuck. A buddy.
We can just blast our way through it and see what happens, because I mean it'll still spawn here, we're just not going to get as much coverage.
Right.
Or we can keep looking for, just keep strip mining until we find a different biome.
True.
Whatever you would like to do.
I mean, we're right here, so might as well do this bit, right?
Yeah, might as well do it.
Wow, 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 wow.
Eventually it's gotta change.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check. Oh wait, this way doesn't go far. forgot you can't hear me. When I just walk away from you. But down this side, turns into a soul sand valley pretty close.
Ooh, okay.
You don't have to go like all the way down for it to change. It's like right here. Yeah, so like anywhere or wherever the chunk is.
Oh yeah,
like,
I see it.
Right here. Yeah, I don't even see any lava pockets for a while, so this might be a good choice. Where did honey go? Because I thought I just heard them.
My aura sense is somewhat working.
Oh.
I found quartz.
Yay!
I found lava too. Whoops.
That's not an ore!
It's a something.
You are
Close
not
enough.
wrong.
Is this seriously basalt dime? No,
Yep.
it's still Sand Valley. So you could probably just mine through this.
It
might
continues
end.
to Soul Valley and then... Oh wait, what the fuck? Oh.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Basalt. Never
yeah.
mind. Okay. We can maybe go this way then from this.
Yeah, let's
So,
do that.
like-
Yeah, let's do
Or
that.
wait. Yeah. Wherever the chunks, whatever. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Ah! It scares me every time.
Yeah, buh.
My sixth sense is trying to kill me.
Ah, did you find more lava?
I found a lot more lava.
Oh.
I also lost my way out of here.
Don't get lost.
Found it. I found it. I'm good.
Bad.
Nice.
You. Oh.
I love hearing random weird songs in a ship playlist, but like, it makes sense.
Mm.
I mean, I guess.
There goes my keyboard again.
my god, what happened? What? There's so many torches.
Someone drove by.
I have 3 stacks.
Oh my god.
I came prepared.
It's a good thing.
Oh, quartz.
I forgot my brightness was on moody.
I found some!
Woo!
You found something! Gimme! No, I'm kidding. Yay! Let's see it, let's see it. Oh yeah, my texture's working.
Hell yeah.
I had a feeling, and I was like, oh, there's quartz over here. I'm gonna keep going. And I
That makes
found
sense.
it.
Makes sense.
I knew it would work. Eventually.
Woo. What you doing? Dabby dabby daboo.
Bappity boopy.
Babbity boop. Boop, 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 boop,
Wait, let me see. Oops, shit. Oh yeah, this is like right on a chunk border, so we should try going this way for a bit.
Okay.
See if it, like right in this line.
Okay. Ow. That was my ass.
Sorry, I just want to blow some shit up.
I want to try and see if my armor's strong enough, but at the same time, I don't want to lose my diamond armor.
I don't want you to do that either.
What if I took a fire res potion?
You could try. I think you should just keep strip mining our explosions, because that seems to be working pretty well.
Yeah, I guess. I'm gonna take a fire res though,
Okay.
because I
Good
keep
luck
running
doing
into
that.
lava.
Rat.
Ooh, quartz. Lava.
Rada rada.
Lava, lava.
Wood.
Oh yeah, that was wood. My wood.
Wood.
Someone pick up shit.
Big bub. Uh. Logba. Oh.
It's basalt deltas again, dang it. That hunch sucked. We can go back to the other one, I guess. Oh, this is a lava pool.
Aww.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't keep going this way. Or at least go through it / around it. One of something. Probably go around it.
Yeah, around here somewhere. I'm finding so much quartz.
Kabor.
Yay. way too. Be careful. I can't tell what level it's on from the map, but.
Got more.
Are you shitting me?
It's right next to lava though, so I have to like
Ah.
block the lava off and then grab it.
Yeah, we
Good
gave
thing
up
I have
that way.
fire res.
See, if we kept going, but no, we had to be safe.
I have 2 now.
I don't have beds.
You ran out? Okay.
Mm. Ow. Thank you.
Whoa.
Where are you guys?
Yep. Oops.
SD.
I'm on fire. Fireball.
Do 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 do. This. What the fuck? Get shit out of here. Fucking bullshit.
Gosh,
I don't think we
wish.
can go this way anymore.
Yeah, probably not. Let's go the other way.
Okay.
I didn't mean to go that way.
Which way? This way?
Oh, I was gonna say this way, but
Okay.
either works. Unless we run into the basalts again, I don't know. Oh. Oops. I just want wanted to be violent.
Ow.
Don't do that.
How did you do this?
I just put bed.
Big
Big bed. Is that basalt that way? Gross.
Yeah. It doesn't say it's a basalt biome, but it looks
It says it right
like
there
it.
once you walk half.
Oh yeah, shit.
Well.
I did this.
Go sexy fireman.
There's lava over this way, be careful. In the ceiling.
Ah, okay.
I am the ceiling, it doesn't scare me.
What if they were purple? Nada. I want something. Please. Begin
Rich.
Woo.
No.
I always
I think I'm gonna go bed.
Okay, bestie.
I found another piece.
Are you shitting me? I literally can't stand you.
It was right here.
Oh my goodness.
I'm free.
I hate this game.
I love you.
Can't mine. This sucks.
Bed.
So many bags.
Oh yeah, I don't want to be near that.
I'm just going total tank at this point. I don't care. Gimme.
Are you gonna lose anything? Do you have stuff on you?
Yeah, but I'm also a big boy, so it's okay.
That's fair.
Bro's beefy, doesn't take fall damage or anything.
True.
Ready for this read?
Hell yeah.
I'm watching, I'm waiting.
Okay, there's lava. That's a hole. That's why I'm not moving. turn around in here somehow. I don't know how to get out of here.
What?
Yeah?
Wow.
Did anyone hear that, or is it, like, did it pick up on my mic at all?
What?
There was a massive, like, explosion outside.
Oh, are you okay?
I don't think a nuclear bomb has gone off yet, so I think I'm good.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm gonna get back to the house and then I'm gonna log off, I think.
Okay. Good night.
Good
Have
night.
a good night.
You
Good luck
too.
getting out of here.
Thank you. I'll be the bad guy now. Okay. Oh my goodness, I'm so tired. I'm honestly getting off a little bit earlier than I was going to because I'm gonna chill for a little bit and then go to sleep. Okay, so I have my stuff back, or at least the most important stuff. I'm gonna have to go mining to get iron again. I mean, I was low on iron before anyway. So I was just bad luck. Okay, cool. That's cool. Alright. But yeah, I'm gonna have to be on at some point and mine some iron because I have literally none anymore, but that's fine. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed stream. If you did, and you haven't already, feel free to follow. Let me find someone to raid for the night. There should be a couple people streaming. I know I saw people streaming, but I don't know if they still are. So let's see what is going on. Also, I'm working currently on a PNG tuber for stream since I'm not using my webcam at the moment. I literally almost finished it before stream today. I just didn't get to finish it off before stream started. So, I will get to that between this stream and next. I promise. Damn, look at you, Looney. Fucking amazing cam quality. Holy shit. But yeah, we're gonna raid Looney. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day, night, afternoon, what have you. And I'll see you guys in Looney stream.